the many crosses the Filipino people have had to bear is the lack of maturity of our political parties. Balimbing, a choice insult from the 1980s, continues to sting because it continues to reflect one aspect of the lack of development among our political parties. Party switching for electoral and political convenience. There are, of course, other aspects. What can be done to reform political parties in the Philippines? Good evening. I'm John Nery, and you are in the Public Square. I am delighted to say that one of the country's most distinguished political scientists is our guest tonight. The former Dean of Liberal Arts at Salle University, Dr. Julio Teehankee is, among many other distinctions, a full professor of political science in DLSU and the chief of party of the Participate consortium. Full disclosure, in the last few years, the Participate consortium convened half a dozen meetings of an advisory group. I have had the privilege of serving in that group. Welcome, Dr. Teehankee, and thank you for joining us in the Public Square.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for having me.
Let me start with some survey findings that you presented at the Multi-Party Summit earlier this month. I was really struck by the findings. First off, according to the December 2023 Public Opinion Monitor of WR Numero, the majority of voting-age Filipinos, some 68%, said they were not familiar with political parties.
Right.
Is that a surprise?
Yes.
Was that a surprise to you?
Well, that figure might be a big surprise for most of us, but for those of us tracing the development of public awareness as regards political parties, it's already a big improvement because several similar surveys have been conducted in the past. The last being 2010, conducted by Pulse Asia, and you'd be surprised that the number of those who are aware, or at least they identify with political parties, is only 10%. So 90%. It went as high as 90% who cannot identify or cannot identify with a political party. So this 68%, more than 20 years hence, is already a big improvement for a country such as ours.
And the numbers are even better for NCR, no? Something like, what was that? 52% said they were familiar versus 32% nationwide. Is that because, it's the capital, it's a concentration of the political institutions as well as the media institutions?
Well, of course, with our political structure and our political system, the center of power has always been Greater Manila, no? And that's the reason why we have those numbers, no? And if you will also disaggregate the number, we will see that there is only a small gap between those who are familiar and those who are unfamiliar with the concept of political parties. But that's the bright side. On the darker side, the bad news is the rest of the country do not follow the same pattern. So a large majority of our respondents are still largely unfamiliar with political parties, with only a small percentage being familiar. So there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of popularizing or reintroducing the concept of political party in our country.
Another thing that struck me was I was really struck when I saw that the youth, aged 18 to 24, are 46% familiar. That's well above the 32% national average. I mean, that says something. Is this because of social media or the internet? What could the reasons be?
Again, there are two sides to that figure. One, of course, that's the good news. There is hope. So our often stated hope that the youth will be the future of our country that is reflected in that number.
Mhm.
But again, no, it depends. No, they may be familiar with political parties, but which political party? No,
Yeah.
so it's a big question, right?
Mhm.
During the last election, a lot of us were hoping that the youth will come out and vote
Mhm.
accordingly. We will
Mhm.
vote for good governance and reformist candidates.
Mhm.
But the youth did come out because
Mhm.
of social media, because
Mhm.
of TikTok, but they did
Mhm.
not vote for the candidates that most of us hope for.
Speaking of specific political parties, this
Right.
survey also asked the respondents, all voting age Filipinos, for those of you who say you are familiar with political parties, which political parties come to mind? And let me just
Right.
read the results. Liberal Party at 15.7%. Uniteam, which is
Right.
a coalition at the party at 13.9%.
Right.
And then a
Right.
far third is PDP Laban at 6.7%. Can you help make sense
Right.
of these numbers?
Okay. So one would be surprised that a number of respondents replied unity team, and this has always been the case
Mm-hmm.
in previous surveys
Mm-hmm.
regarding political parties. They do not, or they cannot. The respondents cannot identify specific parties, but oftentimes they would describe coalition like
Mm-hmm.
unity,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Or they would describe the personality who's
Mm-hmm.
identified with the party, like
Mm-hmm.
partido ni Bongbong,
Mm-hmm.
partido ni Sara,
Mm-hmm.
partido ni Lenny. No?
Mm-hmm.
So that explains also uh, the lack of institutionalization in terms of party branding. No,
Mm-hmm.
like in the past, no, at least before the authoritarian regime, before the declaration of martial law, it was very clear that we had two party brands, no,
That's
the
right. Mm-hmm.
Nacionalista Party and the
Mm-hmm.
Liberal Party, and we
Mm-hmm.
had a de facto two-party system back then. But
Mm-hmm.
after EDSA, we've had a multi-party democracy, and part of the downside of this unstructured, under-institutionalized multi-party system
Mm-hmm.
is that the voters cannot identify with or identify a political party. So that's the story behind the answers like unity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with regard to the Liberal Party has consistently been among the top mentioned political parties when
Mm-hmm.
respondents are asked top of mind,
Mm-hmm.
which political parties do you know or
Mm-hmm.
you can recall. Liberal Party has always been there, no? And
Mm-hmm.
of course the story of the Liberal Party is that it has its ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
It had its time during the opposition to
Mm-hmm.
the Marcos dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
It was part of several coalition after EDSA,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually it became the party in power. Although in the previous years, no, its brand has already been damaged, no,
Mm-hmm.
by a lot of attacks and negative propaganda
Mm-hmm.
in social media. And so it's a surprise that it still remains on top with regard to recall, no? And the explanation for that is that even if it has been attacked consistently and the party image and brand has been damaged, the fact that it was the target of attacks, no,
Mm-hmm.
naalala pa rin siya ng taong bayan, no.
Mm-hmm.
So on the other hand, PDP Laban, no, which became the party in power under the administration of President Duterte,
Mm-hmm.
no, as we know, the followers of the former President Duterte, no, followed his populist brand, no, of us versus them, no.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that the PDP DDS crowd, no, managed to flex its political muscle was because it was at the expense of the Liberal Party. No? So the fact that they kept on attacking the Liberal Party kept the Liberal Party in the public mind. No? So hence, now, based on this survey, the two parties that are on top of the people's mind
Mm-hmm.
are PDP Laban and the Liberal Party. And unity
And unity.
because President Marcos did not identify with an established political party, but a nominal political party, which is Partido Federal.
That's right. I want to go back to that and talk about the fortunes of Partido Federal. But just looking at the numbers, no? LP at 15.7, Uniteam at 13.9. These are not overwhelming numbers, right? I mean, were we expecting higher numbers or low? I mean, how should we understand figures like this?
Yeah. Okay. So again, just by way of a background and a context, the last nationwide survey on public attitude, or public view on political parties was conducted in November of 2006. And this was a study that was the survey that was conducted by the social weather stations, and it was organized by the Ateneo School of Government back then, with support from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. So since the last major nationwide survey on political parties was more than 2 decades ago, or close to 2 decades ago, our Project Participate, which is a consortium between the Ateneo School of Government, the Salle Institute of Governance, NAMFREL, and Code NGO. It's a pro-democracy, non-partisan consortium that's been pushing for political and electoral reforms. And we've decided to commission another nationwide study. This time, it was commissioned by a relatively new survey firm, which is WR Numero. And the survey was conducted last year, November to December of last year. So the gap between the last major nationwide survey and the present, we were thinking, may nagbago ba? No? Ano ba yung nagbago? No? At very significant ba? No? So apparently, looking at the results of the survey, there have been some changes. The fact that, in the previous surveys, like the one I was mentioning about Pulse Asia, those who were unaware or cannot identify with political parties went as high as 90% of the respondents. So, but at least now we have 60+% who can, who cannot, but at least we have 30+% who can already identify or who are familiar with political parties. So that's a significant development. And plus the fact that the youth of today are interested. They might not be familiar with political parties, but they're interested. And there's a question in our survey in which, are you a member of the political parties? Here's the thing, in the past, the percentage of those who were members of political parties were actually higher than those who are members of political parties right now. So it's also an indication that the value of parties as a vehicle for our electoral mobilization has diminished. So, and this is, this will take another study, but based on the literature, we have seen that the decline of political parties is the opposite of the rise of the influence of political dynasties and clans in the country. And I have said time and time again, it is clans, not parties, that have been the building blocks of Philippine politics. So it's time to re-establish the political party as the vehicle for political mobilization in the country.
And one of the foundations for re-establishing the political parties would be this finding that around 20% of Filipinos are interested in becoming members of a political party. I mean, if you have 60 million voters, that's 12 million people. I mean, that's a large pool. That
is a pool that you can start with. You can begin with. Because one thing, of course, it's for those of us who are idealistic and would like to see well-established ideological platform-based party, we have to understand that in the game of politics, it's also about winning, right? So what is the value and value for the constituents? Why would they support a party? And of course, we've run a couple of questions as well. what would induce them to join a political party or support a political party. And among the top choices were, of course, if there's any help or value that the party would bring to the ordinary voters. No? So that's still part of constituency building. No? Now, on the extreme side of that is clientelism, or what we call patron-client relations, the ayuda style of politics. No? But that's part of politics, no? Especially at the local level. No? Because at the local level, that's where the politicians and their constituents really know each other and they interact face to face. No? As you go higher up the national government, no, it becomes distant. No? So it is now a question of whether a personality or a political personality or a political party would be the one to provide the service to the constituency. So it's a question of, do you support a party because it will help you, or do you believe in the cause of the political party?
I think the findings were the top three reasons for becoming a member were public service delivery, then representation, meaning aligned with your beliefs and values, and then linkage.
Linkage, yes.
You ran another question, you asked another question about trust, which is different from recall.
Yes.
So you asked those who are both familiar and unfamiliar with political parties, which parties do you trust and how much do you trust them? And as you said, the top two in name recall are also the top two as far as trust is concerned. For the those who describe themselves as unfamiliar with political parties, PDP had a trust rating of 38%, and Liberal Party at 36%. I mean, that's like a third of the electorate. Those who were familiar with political parties, it's majority ratings. PDP at 54%, LP at 51%.
Yes.
What do we make of those numbers?
My reading is actually, of course, since 2016, we've been operating under a highly polarized political environment. No? And the main protagonists in this highly polarized, hyper-polarized even, political environment are the followers of the so-called Dilawan or Pink, the former Liberal Party stalwarts, and those who are supportive of the populist politics of Rodrigo Duterte. No? And of course, these two parties are identified with these two protagonists in this hyper-polarized political environment. So I think this is an extension of that rivalry between the populists, and the reformists, the so-called reformists. So, but of course, right now we are seeing a crack, in the populist constituency, with the ongoing wranglings within the unity. So there's now a crack within the populist grouping, and now we're seeing also a reconsolidation of the so-called reformist forces trying to find relevancy in a second Marcos presidency.
I resonate with your view about polarization. I mean, I can see that, I've covered that. But at the same time, I also have to ask, we have the first majority president under the EDSA Constitution. Isn't that proof that in the end, we are not as polarized as our politics or our political rhetoric might make it seem?
Well, one can read it that way, but my sense is that the great irony that the first majority president in the EDSA period is another Marcos. That's one great irony. But of course, what led us to that point was due to other factors that happened within the EDSA Republic, within the EDSA regime. And for me, it was really the failure of the reform narrative during the second Aquino presidency that was taken advantage by the populist rhetoric of Rodrigo Duterte. And Rodrigo Duterte was the John the Baptist to the second coming of the Marcoses. Diba?
Okay.
Very appropriate yung aking analogy
for the Holy Week.
Yeah, so yun.
Oh, wow.
So, but it was really no. It was also, and we can also see another factors, the weakness of the no. I wrote a paper on this, no, yung on authoritarian parties, no.
That's right.
You can find it online. I wrote an entire paper on the KBL as an example of the survival of an authoritarian party and how it influenced all the post Marcos era parties, no, the post-EDSA parties, because the Marcos never disappeared. No? They've always been here. No? And the followers of the Marcos regime, specifically the former members of the KBL, were just dispersed and disguised themselves as Democrats during the period of transition until the second coming of the Marcoses, right?
I remember this classic joke about the true meaning of KBL, no? During the martial law years, and the very definition of patronage politics. It stood for Kasal Binyag Libing.
Kasal Binyag Libing. Yes.
And so the politicians were present at all these important occasions. It's been actually there are a few more things from the survey that that struck me as interesting, but I want to move on to the question of reform. And Participate has been putting this back on the national agenda. It's been 20 years since the first bill for what is now the Philippine Political Party Development Act. Was first introduced, but nothing really happens. First of all, can you give us what is the Development Act all about? What does it boil down to?
Okay. But before we go into the development, the bill, the PPDA, let's first ask why parties, why political parties are important, right? So political parties play an important part in an electoral democracy, no? And parties are the critical elements to strengthening democracy. So if you have a weak political party system, most likely will have a weak democracy. No? And the irony is that the Philippines takes pride in being the oldest democracy in this part of the world, right? And we have had the most extensive experience in political party politics. No? We've had our first political party in 1900, no? And the very first political party in the Philippines was Federalista Party, no?
Right.
Partido Federal, right? So, but of course, we've had 4 political party systems. We had the dominance of the Nacionalista Party in the American colonial period. We've had the 2-party system during the post-war period. We've had again a dominance of an authoritarian party regime during the time of the Marcoses with the KBL, and then we have this multi-party democracy, which is really largely unorganized, under-institutionalized, no? Because as of 2022, there are 174 national, local, regional political parties on top of 177 party list organization. The Philippines has a total of 351 political parties. Imagine 351 political parties in our country. And the average of the number of parties in Southeast Asia is largely, the highest can be 30 political parties nationally, no, on the average. And we have 351 political parties, my goodness. So, it's also a reflection of the Filipino culture perhaps, di ba? Yung mga association and organization abroad, pag nag-away-away sila, nag-split sila, nagpa-factionalize and all, no? So that is the state of our political party now, no? So
do we need the absolute number to come down, or that's incidental?
it's incidental, no? For as long as it's functioning as a genuine political vehicle and it represents the will of the people, we can have even 1,000. Right?
Okay.
But what we have are mini political machines controlled largely by political families all over the country. No? If not political clans, no, political interests. No, some of the contractors are now setting up their own political parties.
Right.
Political personalities who are not really into public service. They just enter using their popularity. No? So all of these contribute to a weakened political party system. And if you have a weak political party system, that's where patronage, clientelism, corruption, and all of these shenanigans come in. And in the end, it corrodes, it erodes the very foundation of our democracy, our democratic system. So that is the danger. So it is time for those, no, for some geeky political scientists like myself to push for the reforms. But John, we've been fighting for this for the past 20, 30 years. No? I was there when the first all-political party summit was convened. No, this was after EDSA II. And there was this sense of, oh, reforms are possible. No? It's possible to have good governance. We have a new administration, a new regime that will usher in moral politics. No? And then, so with all this feeling of confidence, no, the then Speaker Jose de Venecia and Senate President Edgardo J. Angara convened all the political parties in Clark, no, and I was one of those who attended, representing a think tank for another political party. I was a very young graduate student back then. This was 20 years ago. And out of that summit, no, came the proposal to push for the Political Party Development Act, which was first introduced in Congress in 2004. No, the summit was held in 2003. And we are already in 2024. And that bill has been introduced every Congress since then, and it has failed to pass. And that bill comprises 3 to 4 major provisions. One is the campaign finance reform. The other one is the public subsidy for political parties. The third one is the anti-balimbing or anti-party turncoatism. And the last is forging citizen party relations through the building of party institutes and promoting political and civic education. So, but it has not passed. No? This bill has not passed since then. So that is the reason why after 2022, the Project Participate decided to continue pushing for the passage of this bill, because at the start of this Congress, it was no less than the former president, former speaker, Gloria Macapagal Arroyo, who reintroduced the bill. But because of the internal politics inside the House, no, it has failed. No, it was one of the victims of the political wranglings within the House. So back to square one.
The idea came about because of a crisis, no?
Right.
The EDSA II crisis, and the political class started thinking, wait a minute, this might all implode, right?
Right.
Do you think we need another political emergency or political crisis to finally push the act to the finish line?
If I will show you a graph based on the varieties of democracy data, and you'd see that we've been living through one crisis after the other. No? We've been through a cycle of political boom and bust, no? Which is similar to the economic cycle of economic boom and bust. No? And what we've had is what political scientists would call a cycle of political development and decay. No? But we've not had a long period of political development. So we didn't have a longer breathing period for us to rebuild our political system and our political structure and totally reform it. No, one way of doing it is, well, the controversial charter change, but the charter change is in itself, no, a cause of polarization, no,
Yeah.
and that's always been, no, because essentially it's a question of trust, no. Who will benefit, no? Who will do it? What process, no? It's all a question of trust, no? Because again, no, it is an elite initiative, no, di ba? So it's an elite, always been an elite initiative, and it's not been really from the bottom up. So what we are doing at Participate really is we are not arrogant to say that the people need to be educated, but rather we just need to provide the avenue by which they can be informed and they can get the proper information regarding these issues.
Dr. July, we're running a little long. But I'd like to
Yes.
maybe just ask a couple of questions about the four reforms. No,
Right.
maybe one on state subsidy. So this
Right.
the idea is for the government itself, the national government, to match
Right.
a certain level of funding per political party.
Right.
Right, and the idea
Right.
is that will allow a political party to actually have enough funds to organize, to mobilize, to take part in electoral exercises, and not depend on,
Right.
the pocket money of a financier and so on. Can you talk more about
Right.
state subsidy?
Okay, so the idea of subsidizing political parties is, of course, based on the experience of the more advanced democracies, no, particularly in the West, no, in Europe in particular, Germany and the like, no, in which based on your number of seats in the legislature, no, you are given a subsidy for the development of your political party. So this is, for example, in the German case, no, after the Second World War, no, a lot of the Germans reflected, no, and on what happened, no, and how come an evil such as Hitler would emerge under a democratic system
That's right.
before the war, no, the democratic system during
The
the
Weimar
Weimar
Republic.
Republic, no. So of course they really place premium in political and civic active citizenship, no, such that they invested on democracy, they invested on rebuilding their democracy, and they really put money in it by actually subsidizing political parties, no, so that it will be independent and autonomous from particularistic interests, no. And this is also the beginning of the German political foundations, the so-called Stiftungs. That's why we have the Konrad Adenauer, Friedrich Naumann, Friedrich Ebert, Hans Seidel,
That's right.
etc., etc. So then this is also part of their overseas development aid, no, in promoting democracy, no. So the idea of giving money to political parties, especially those medium size or those representing marginalized sectors, is really a good idea, no. But of course, it is also the most contentious in the bill, because for those critics, no, saying in the Philippines, even the most noble idea, reform proposal, can be subverted by the trapos, by the elites. Now, case in point, the party list system, right? So if you give them money, no, what would prevent the trapos from using it again as another pork barrel? Diba? So medyo no, it's a valid commentary, no, but it's a carrot and stick, kasi the way the bill has been formulated, no, you have the subsidy as the carrot, and the stick is the anti-balimbing or the anti-party switching, no? So for example, your party A, you've been given X percentage of money to help build your party. And if you have candidates who win under your party and that candidate switches party, after election, he will forfeit, or he or she will forfeit his or her seat, and might even pay some interest, diba? And ban from running in the next election. So these are incentives and disincentives. So if you have this subsidy, and then you have the penalty of if you violate the terms of the subsidy, then it might work, right? It might work. No? So again, then there's the question of, if we have 351 parties, sino sa kanila yung wala nang, di ba? It will be very expensive also. No? So you must develop a way of determining how much and who will benefit. No? And then the third is perhaps there's a need for really having a honest to goodness, serious campaign finance reform. And part of this would be, aside from having the stricter laws, realistic laws regarding campaign spending, limits to campaign contribution and spending, one idea given to me by a former congressman is to lower the cost of elections. No, but it's easier said than done. No? But right. if you lower the cost of election, then perhaps and some are saying it's because of the incentive of running for public office. A lot of perks are given to public officials in the Philippines. In the European countries, in Sweden, for example, or in other parts of the Scandinavian region, some politicians are not even paid. Diba? Diba? So it's really public service, no? Hindi sila binabayaran, wala silang nakukuha. Kaya talagang yung gustong pumasok sa politika, yung talagang gusto lang magserbisyo, no? So may mga ganon, no? So all of these are proposals, no? Are ideas that our project participate have been consulting the different sectors, and they're trying to get their input, and even the parties themselves. No, we've conducted our series of multi-party dialogues, and we've concluded it with a multi-party summit held 2 weeks ago. And we've also introduced yung Academy of Multi-Party Democracy, which is the first school for all political parties in the country. So that's how we were trying to push for these reforms.
I have a question about party switching. So we all know the phenomenon, right? So in 2010, when Noynoy Aquino won, there was a rush of new members to the Liberal Party. In 2016, when Duterte won with only 3 PDP laban, winners win him.
Plus.
Yeah, so there was a rush out of LP to PDP laban. However, in 2022, there was no similar rush to Partido Federal. So I wanted to go back to this. Does this mean that the party switching, at least under the second Marcos, is not as operative, or the party switching is of a more subtle form?
Well, in the first place, there was no really identified administration party right after the victory of BBM. No? So the nominal administration party was Partido Federal, no? But we all know that Partido Federal was a paper party, no? And it was just a vehicle to allow then candidate BBM to run for the presidency. In fact, it's Partido Federal, but BBM did not even mention federalism during their campaign. No? There was no position on federalism. So that was kind of odd for a party named after federalism. No? So what happened was apparently there was no rush for a dominant, and this is what I call what we have is a dominant presidential party system. No, the post-EDSA party system is a dominant presidential party system in which from KBL they went to Lakas, they went to PMP, they went to Kampi, they went to LP, they went to PDP, but they jumped to, and now on below the radar, no, they were jumping to Lakas CMD. So Lakas CMD became the de facto presidential party because perhaps President BBM was too busy with other things to take care of political parties. No, so he left it to his top political lieutenant, who happens to be his cousin, no, the speaker. No, so Lakas, if you will see, if you trace all the party switching now, they are all going into Lakas CMD, no? And this entire political drama unfolding before our eyes between the former allies in the unity team, you can see that it's largely the former PDP Laban who jumped into Lakas CMD, or now heeding the commands of the speaker. So,
Dean, if you allow me one last question. No? So I was at the
Yes.
multi-party summit 2 weeks ago, and I
Yes,
couldn't help but
yes.
note the two elephants who were not in the room. The biggest parties were not there.
Right.
Lakas and PDP
And PDP Laban.
were not really
Yeah.
there. Were not actively present.
Right.
What does obviously that's an obstacle, but it's a surmountable obstacle.
Right.
How do you propose to get these parties to join the initiatives, and maybe to also help
Yeah.
push the Political
Right.
Party Development Act?
Right. To be fair, at the beginning, during our very first, multi-party dialogue, no, I think, were you there? I'm not
No,
sure.
I wasn't
This
there,
was,
no.
2022 or early 23. A representative of Lakas was there, sent by the speaker, and an officer of the PDP Laban was also present. PDP Laban was present during our democracy summit, no, in 2023, no. So and the president of the party, no, Congressman Pepito Alvarez, was there, no. So the PDP Laban was, at least the Duterte wing of the PDP Laban, who is, according to COMELEC and even the Supreme Court, now the dominant PDP Laban, was quite active at the beginning of our initiative. But I understand that because of the internal party wranglings, they've also suffered from party switching, and now they're in a political battle with the administration. So kaya hindi na sila nakasama sa amin, no? And then with Lakas, of course, Lakas being the dominant party, no, we have invited them to all our activities, and yeah, we understand they are the dominant party. Perhaps they think that they do not need these things right now, but who knows, in the future they might. So, but we will continue to invite them, no? And this initiative is for all political parties, because what we want is not only to push for the agenda of the Political Party Development Act, but to form at least a community of reformers within the parties, no? And it's also a safe space for different party members to interact. Like, for example, we concluded our first batch of the Academy of Multi-Party Democracy. Parties who are sworn rivals or even enemies ideologically managed to join us for half a year in 3 modules, no, and form a community. Now they have their own group chat, and some of them were crying. They used to hate each other, but now they have this sense of community. So this is the kind of reforms that we want, no?
That's right.
Diba? So hopefully we succeed. But it's a long game, no? It's a long and arduous task, no? But we're simply hoping to restart this sense of urgency for pushing for reforms. The same sense of urgency we've had at the eve of the EDSA revolution.
Yeah.
Diba? During our time.
Yeah, it's the long game, but it's a game that we all have to play. Thank you, Dr. July Teehankee. This has been an instructive,
John.
enlightening discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
That's it for us tonight. The next step for engaged citizens, as always, is to take a more active part in rebuilding our democracy, even to the extent of joining political parties. See you in the public square. This is John Nery. Thank you and good night.